They arrived with hope, with wood and iron, with dreams of a new life across the sea. But they left behind no triumph. They vanished. The year was 1587. The place was an island off the coast of what is now North Carolina, Roanoke Island. A handful of English settlers, driven by ambition and backed by a crown, sought to build a colony in a new world. They planted fields. They dug wells. They built homes. Behind them rose the Atlantic's roar and the forest silence. Ahead of them, unknown, less than 4 years later, their village was empty. No fire in the hearth. No footprints in the sand. Only a puzzling clue carved into wood. The word Croatoan. For centuries, historians have asked, what happened to the 115 men, 17 women, and 11 children of Roanoke? Were they massacred by tribes? Did they wander west? Were they assimilated? But did something darker, starvation, disease, war, sweep them away? The Crown declared the colony abandoned. Time swallowed names. Generations forgot. But the lineage of disappearance stretches far deeper. This is not just the story of a lost colony. It is a parable of hope and hubris, of men carrying crosses and muskets, believing the land welcomed them, only to realize the land demanded allegiance first. It is a skeleton in colonial history's closet, an early sign that the New World did not heed English ambition. Tonight we unravel not only what the settlers tried to build, but what stopped them, what hunted them, and why their disappearance still echoes today. If you listen to the trees, the marshes, the silent ruins, you might still hear their voices. Weighed by time, scattered by wind, seeking remembrance. Subscribe to explore the mysteries empires bury and the voices they try to silence. Before it became a mystery whispered through time, Roanoke was a promise. To Queen Elizabeth I, it was a foothold in the New World. To Sir Walter Raleigh, it was ambition carved across the Atlantic. To the men and women who set sail in 1587, it was escape, a fragile bridge between old hopes and new horizons. The story begins decades before the word Croatoan was carved into wood. In the mid-1500s, England watched enviously as Spain grew rich from the Americas. Spanish ships returned heavy with gold and silver, their kings growing fat on stolen wealth. England, still young as an empire, wanted its share. Exploration became not just adventure, but state policy, conquest dressed in God's blessing. Sir Walter Raleigh, one of Elizabeth's most trusted courtiers, proposed a plan. If Spain could take the south, England would take the north. A colony, he said, would bring glory, trade, and a base to harass Spanish fleets. In 1584, he received a royal charter to discover, search, find out, and view such remote heathen and barbarous lands, not already claimed by Christian princes. It was conquest with a cross in one hand and a flag in the other. The first expedition arrived on Roanoke Island that summer. It was lush, green, and surrounded by waters thick with fish. They met the local Algonquian peoples, the Secretans, the Croatoans, and the Roanokes, whose villages dotted the coastal plain. Early reports spoke of fertile soil, friendly trade, and open skies. England's propaganda machine celebrated it as the dawn of empire. But the first settlers soon learned the truth hidden behind the postcard beauty. The soil was sandy and poor for farming. The island was small and isolated, with no deep harbor for large ships. And the relationships with native tribes, cordial at first, frayed quickly under hunger, misunderstanding, and arrogance. In 1585, the first English settlement under Ralph Lane built a small fort and tried to survive. They depended heavily on local tribes for food. But when relations soured, after thefts, skirmishes, and a killing of the Secretary leader Wingina, the settlement turned into a siege. Starvation followed, and Lane's men grew desperate. When Sir Francis Drake appeared unexpectedly in 1586 after raiding Spanish ports, Lane begged him for passage home. They abandoned Roanoke without ceremony. The first colony was gone, the dream postponed. When a supply ship finally arrived weeks later, it found only empty huts and a wilderness reclaiming what little the English had built. Still, Raleigh refused to give up. The second attempt will be different. He would send not soldiers, but settlers, men, women, and children. A real colony, a New England across the sea. In May 1587, 115 colonists set sail from Portsmouth under Governor John White, an artist, not a warrior. His mission: establish a permanent English presence in the Americas. Among them was his daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband Ananias. During that voyage, somewhere between hope and hunger, Eleanor gave birth to a child, Virginia Dare, the first English baby born in the New World. They landed on Roanoke in late July, intending to continue north to Chesapeake Bay, where conditions were said to be better. But the ship's pilot, Simon Fernandez, refused to go farther, insisting they settle where they were. Some historians think he was impatient. Others suspect mutiny or fear of hurricane season. Whatever his reasons, the colonists stayed, a fatal decision. When they arrived, they found the old fort from 1585 abandoned and decaying. Skeletons of cabins and rusted tools littered the site. The woods are quiet, too quiet. The Roanoke tribe, once nearby, had disappeared or moved inland. Governor White immediately sought out the Croatoan people on nearby Hatteras Island, allies from the first expedition. They greeted the newcomers cautiously, but agreed to trade. The colonists repaired the fort, planted gardens, and wrote letters home. But from the start, they faced trouble, dwindling supplies, disease, and growing tension with neighboring tribes angered by past English violence. Within weeks, one of White's assistants, George Howe, was killed while crabbing along the shore, speared to death by warriors from Dasamungwapuk. Fear spread through the camp like rot. White decided to return to England for supplies, promising his daughter and grandchild he would return quickly. He left Roanoke on August 27, 1587. He did not return for 3 years. War had erupted between England and Spain. The Spanish Armada threatened invasion, and every English ship was commandeered for defense. White begged for passage back, but fate and politics conspired against him. By the time he finally secured a vessel, it was 1590, the Atlantic storms already rising when he sighted the Carolina coast again. As his ship approached Roanoke, he strained to see smoke from chimneys, hear dogs barking, voices calling. Anything. But the island was silent. He and his men rowed ashore and found the settlement in ruin. Weeds choked the paths. Houses were dismantled. No graves, no bodies, nothing. Then he saw it. Carved into a post was a single word: Croatoan. It was the name of the friendly tribe 50 miles south. White took it as a sign that his people had relocated there safely. He searched for another mark, a cross, which they had agreed would signal distress if they left under threat. There was none, but storms rolled in from the sea before White could sail south to confirm. His crew, fearful of wrecking, refused to linger. The governor left Roanoke in despair, forced to abandon his search. He would never return. And with that, the colony dissolved into legend. An entire settlement, men, women, and children, disappeared from history, leaving behind only a carved word and a question that still haunts scholars today. What really happened to the lost colony? Governor John White's departure had left one small wooden fort on an island and a promise that help would come soon. 3 years later, when he finally returned, there was no fort, no smoke, no bodies. Only the word Croatoan carved into timber and a second carving, Ciro, half finished on a nearby tree. White wanted to sail 50 miles south to the Croatoan people's home on Hatteras Island, but Atlantic storms and a restless crew drove his ship back toward England. That was the last direct search in his lifetime. In the decades that followed, Roanoke became more rumor than evidence. England was fighting Spain, exploration stalled, but sailors kept hearing stories. Fair-skinned children living among native tribes, fragments of English clothing, even a broken musket lock found far inland. Each clue spawned a theory. By 1607, when Jamestown was founded, the question still burned. Captain John Smith recorded that friendly Algonquian leaders mentioned other tribes sheltering Europeans who had white apparel and houses walled round. Later reports from Jamestown settlers said the same. Men and women speaking English words, wearing copper crosses. Yet no rescue party was ever sent. Disease, famine, and native wars consumed the new colony's strength. The fate of Roanoke slipped again into silence. For centuries of searches followed. Archaeologists have sifted sand, divers have mapped shoals, and historians have chased legends across 3 states. Their discoveries paint not one clear picture, but several overlapping truths. Some evidence points to integration. Artifacts of late 16th century English origin, nails, a gun lock, fragments of earthenware, have surfaced at Hatteras Island, the Croatoan homeland. Excavations led by the First Colony Foundation and British Museum teams suggest that at least part of the colony may have moved there, joining the Croatoans for survival. Elizabethan glass beads and copper pieces, valuable in native trade, hint that English settlers became neighbors, not invaders. Other clues lead inland, to the site known as Site X, near the Chowan River, 60 miles west of Roanoke. There, pottery identical to Roanoke's distinctive border has been unearthed beside Algonquian ceramics. It suggests another group, perhaps half the colonists, sought refuge among the tribes of the interior, following a pattern familiar in early colonial survival. Small bands splitting off, merging, adapting. If so, Roanoke's people may not have died at once, but dissolved slowly into the native world that fed them. Yet darker possibilities linger. Starvation and conflict had nearly destroyed the first colony. The second may have suffered the same fate. Hurricane debris and rising seas show that the Outer Banks were fragile even then. One violent storm or a harsh winter could have erased every trace. An English fear of lost souls in a savage wilderness, fed by religious guilt, turned archaeology into folklore. Ghost fires seen from ships, cries in the marsh, the island cursed. Modern science keeps digging where legend left off. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped palisade lines beneath layers of sand. Isotope tests on artifacts trace clay to English kills of the 1580s. No graves, no mass remains, nothing that speaks a massacre. Instead, the evidence favors quiet absorption, a slow blending into Croatoan and mainland tribes whose descendants still live along the Carolina coast. Some family oral histories claim light-eyed ancestors and English words passed down generations. History may hide, but memory sometimes persists in blood. In the end, the disappearance may not be a mystery at all, but a transformation. The colony did not vanish. It adapted, leaving the myth of lost to those who needed empire's failure to sound romantic. And yet the carving Croatoan endures as symbol. One word, carved in desperation or hope, standing at the border between survival and oblivion. When John White looked upon in the rain, he believed it meant life. Centuries later, we still do not know if he was right. What we do know is that Roanoke's story was never about disappearance alone. It was the first lesson that the New World would not yield easily, and that colonization would consume the unprepared as readily as it would devour the land itself. When the English crown looked west after 1590, it wanted triumph to report, not silence. Yet Roanoke's failure hung in the air like fog off the Atlantic. No one at court spoke of it openly. Instead, official records turned vague. The late enterprise, the former attempt. An empire in its infancy had discovered something it could not afford to admit. The New World could defeat ambition. To the sailors and settlers who followed, the lost colony became an uneasy warning. When Jamestown was founded in 1607, every creak of the forest sounded like Roanoke's ghost. The men who built the palisade whispered about abandoned huts and the fate of those who came before. The word Croatoan lingered like a curse they were determined to outlive. From that anxiety, stories grew. Some were born from guilt. Others from the human need to explain the unexplainable. There were tales of phantom fires flickering on the island shore, as if campfires still burned for colonists who never died. Sailors swore they saw lights moving through the pine forest at night, too steady to be lightning, too purposeful to be nature. Fishermen claimed to hear voices across the waves, shouts in a language that sounded half English, have something older. Even in the 19th century, coastal residents told travelers that if you called out at dusk, sometimes a woman's voice answered from the trees. Folklore fed history as much as history fed folklore. By the 1700s, Roanoke had become both lesson and omen. Colonial preachers spoke of divine punishment for greed and pride. Romantic writers turned Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil, in a symbol, the innocent sacrifice to wilderness or the ghostly maiden haunting the woods. In one version, she was transformed by native magic into a white doe, running forever between two worlds. The myth erased the colony's real women, real labor, real hunger, but it gave English culture a tragic purity it could stomach. Underneath the legends lay a political silence. The failure of Roanoke was more than logistical, it was ideological. It revealed that colonization demanded not vision but violence, not courage but control. Every later colony, from Jamestown to Barbados to Massachusetts, learned to survive only by dominating the land and the people already on it. Roanoke's disappearance, left unexplained, became a convenient erasure. No blood to account for, no conquest to justify. It vanished neatly, as if history itself had tidied the record. Modern archaeologists have found no massacre layer, no arrow-riddled bones, no ash of destroyed homes. The settlers simply faded. That quiet ending embarrassed empire far more than tragedy would have. Heroic deaths make good propaganda. Slow absorption does not. So the lost colony label was born, a phrase that transformed failure into mystery, a puzzle to be solved rather than a lesson to be learned. By the 19th century, Roanoke's ghost was American property. The United States, eager for its own myths, adopted the story. Painters imagined daring settlers surrounded by shadowy natives. Poets described Virginia Dare as a symbol of European destiny reclaimed by wilderness. The real history, the violence of first contact, the fragile alliances, the greed and hunger, was stripped away until only the disappearance remained, shimmering like a mirage. And yet, beneath each retelling, the island itself endured. Storms reshaped its dunes, trees swallowed the old fort's outline, and saltwater crept steadily inland. Sometimes erosion uncovers artifacts, a shard of pottery, a rusted hinge, a flintlock fragment, each piece a whisper from the world between survival and oblivion. Every discovery revives the same questions that have haunted for centuries. Where did they go? Who did they become? The simplest answer may be the truest. They stopped being English. They became part of the land they tried to tame, folded into new families and languages until even memories ceased to divide them. The empire lost its first children to the very world it sought to claim. And maybe that is why the mystery refuses to die. Because every empire fears disappearance, not of its people, but of its power. Roanoke's story is not merely about loss. It is about the limits of control. For all its ships and charters and prayers, England's first attempt at America ended not in conquest, but in silence. And silence is a poor foundation for glory. 400 years have not been enough to silence Roanoke. For each generation that came after, the island remained an unanswered question, a small wound in the vast narrative of empire. And as America built its own mythology of discovery and destiny, the story of the lost colony offered both a mirror and a mystery, a beginning that refused to explain itself. When archaeology matured in the 19th century, curiosity turned to science. Local farmers on Roanoke Island found bits of pottery, pipe stems, rusted nails. Some claim to have found carved stones inscribed with messages from Eleanor Dare, mother of Virginia. These Dare stones told a tragic story. The colonists killed by disease and native attacks, Eleanor begging her father to find her body inland. For decades, they were displayed as truth. Then scholars analyzed the carving style, the weathering, and the suspicious timing of discovery. They were forgeries. Roanoke, it seemed, could not even offer closure honestly. In the 20th century, teams with trowels and maps replaced treasure hunters with shovels. In 1940, The National Park Service marked Fort Raleigh as a historic site, fencing off the few acres where the colony had once stood. Excavations began under the careful eyes of archaeologists, geologists, and dreamers. They found traces, post holes outlining the fort, a smudge of burned soil, a scattering of European ceramics, and then nothing. No graves, no mass death. The evidence spoke softly but clearly. The colonists had dismantled their homes before leaving. This was not panic. It was planned departure. By the 1990s, satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar had become tools of the search. Scientists traced the island's slow erosion, proving that parts of the original settlement site had long since slipped beneath Albemarle Sound. Half of Roanoke's footprint may rest underwater, entombed in silt and seagrass. Divers have searched those waters for timbers or anchors, finding only fragments of shipwrecks from later centuries. Nature had finished the work empire began, erasing what was inconvenient. But science kept finding crumbs. On Hatteras Island, descendants of the Croatoan people worked with archaeologists to explore the dunes of Buxton. There they uncovered iron tools of English make, copper rings, and fragments of border were identical to pottery found at the 1585 camp. They also found pieces of native pottery modified with English techniques, tempering and glazing methods unknown in Algonquian tradition. The evidence was quiet, but it whispered integration. The colonists hadn't vanished. They had adapted. Another lead came from inland, near the Chowan River. An old map drawn by Governor White himself, rediscovered in the British Museum, held a secret. Beneath a paper patch at the map's edge lay a faint four-pointed star, drawn in invisible ink, marking a site 60 miles west of Roanoke. Historians called it Site X. When teams excavated the area, they found Elizabethan artifacts, a gunlock, shards of a crucible for smelting metal, fragments of pottery unlike native manufacture. Was this a splinter group? A failed second settlement? Or the last home of the survivors? No one could say, but it fit a pattern: survival through dispersal. Even DNA science has joined the search. Researchers have collected samples from families in the Carolinas and Virginia who trace ancestry to both English and native lines. Some possess oral histories claiming descent from white ancestors of Roanoke. Genetic evidence remains inconclusive, tangled in centuries of intermarriage. But the persistence of the story itself carries weight. Communities remember what archives forget. Yet the mystery persists because certainty resists. Every discovery spawns new questions. If they joined the Croatoans, why did later explorers not find them? If they went inland, why did no messenger return to the coast? If they survived for years, why is there no trace of English tools and 17th century tribal sites beyond the coast? Archaeology cannot answer what weather, war, and time have conspired to hide. Still, the legend has become more than a question of fact. It has become a reflection of how societies write their beginnings. For Britain, Roanoke was an embarrassment, a venture that ended in silence rather than empire. For early America, it became a myth of mystery rather than guilt. Settlers swallowed by wilderness, not undone by their own arrogance. For the descendants of the Croatoan and other Algonquian peoples, is a story of survival and erasure. How Europeans entered their world, failed to master it, and then were written out of their own failure. Every summer, outdoor dramas reenact the colony's last days. Tourists sit beneath the stars, watching actors in Elizabethan dress vanish in a fog, while a voice whispers Croatoan. It is part ghost story, part confession. The stage lights dim, and the audience leaves with the same unanswered question that John White carried across the sea. Perhaps that is the real reason the story endures. It never ends. It remains open, a mirror for each generation's fears. Hunger, displacement, the loss of certainty, the fragility of belonging. And as sea levels rise, the island continues to shrink. One day, the last traces of the fort may disappear beneath the tide completely. When that happens, the mystery will not die. It will simply move into stories, into memory, into the restless conscience of a nation built on disappearances. The lost colony may never be found because it was never truly lost. It was absorbed by land, by people, by time. And perhaps, beneath the Atlantic wind that brushes the Carolina coast, the settlers of Roanoke have already spoken their last word. We simply haven't learned how to listen. History does not always begin with victory. Sometimes it begins with silence, with an empty place where people once breathed. Roanoke was meant to be England's first New World triumph, a shining seed of empire planted across the sea. Instead, it became a void, and from that void, the mythology of America was born. When later colonists landed at Jamestown 20 years after Roanoke's disappearance, they carried the ghost of the first colony with them. The lesson was clear: never rely on goodwill, always on force. Bring soldiers, not families. Take the land, do not share it. Roanoke's failure taught England that survival in the New World would require dominance. And so, from its ashes, empire hardened. Jamestown became a fortress, not a village. Trade gave way to coercion, diplomacy to war. Where John Whitehead sought to coexist, Captain John Smith demanded tribute. By 1622, the Powhatan Confederacy, once host to English settlers, lay shattered in a series of brutal wars. The empire had learned. It would not lose another colony to uncertainty. It would conquer or die trying. But Roanoke's story refused to disappear. For England, it remained a reminder of failure. For America, it became something else entirely, a myth of innocence. As the young nation grew, it reimagined the lost colony not as tragedy born of arrogance, but as a romantic mystery. The colonists were painted as symbols of courage, their disappearance as destiny. It was easier to mourn their loss than to examine what they represented. The first uneasy collision between European ambition and indigenous survival. In 19th century art and literature, Virginia Dare transformed from a real infant into allegory. The child of Europe, pure and new, swallowed by the wilderness. Painters showed her as a pale figure wandering forests of eternal twilight. Poets turned her into the white doe, cursed to run forever through Carolina's woods. In these stories, the wilderness was not a home already lived in by thousands. It was an empty stage for English dreams. Roanoke became the birthplace not of empire's failure, but of the American imagination, where disappearance felt romantic, not damning. Yet the truth was never gone, only buried. The descendants of the Croatoan people, today known as the Hatteras and Lumbee tribes, kept oral histories of their ancestors helping starving English settlers of families who stayed, married, taught, and were forgotten. When historians dismissed these accounts as legend, they repeated the same arrogance that erased the first colony in the first place. Only recently have archaeologists begun to treat those stories as evidence. Every shard found at Hatteras or along the Chowan River lends weight to what native voices have said all along. Roanoke did not vanish. It blended. It survived. In that sense, the lost colony's legacy is not failure, but transformation. It is the first recorded moment when English culture learned that survival in America would depend not on domination, but on adaptation, a lesson ignored at terrible cost. Had Roanoke's quiet disappearance been understood, perhaps later centuries of conquest might have taken a different path. Instead, empire buried it beneath pride, and America turned it into legend. Still, the mystery endures because it speaks to something deeper than archaeology. It is the fear of being forgotten, of building something, naming it, believing it permanent, and then watching nature and time reclaim it. Every civilization carries that fear. Roanoke is the ghost that reminds us how fragile our stories are. It is the sound of waves washing over ambition, the whisper of forests closing around names carved in wood. Today, the island remains small and quiet. Tourists walk its trails, hear the rustle of pines, the distant crash of surf. There's a plaque, a monument, a few artifacts behind glass. But when the wind rises off the Atlantic and dusk falls, the island feels like a question still waiting for an answer. Perhaps that is its true power. not what it reveals, but what it refuses to explain. In the end, the lost colony left behind more than mystery. It left the first warning about empire, the first reminder that nature, hunger, and human pride obey no crown. It left proof that survival belongs to those who listen to the land, not those who try to rule it. And it left a haunting symmetry. The place where England's dream began also marked the first grave of that dream's innocence. The word Croatoan remains carved in the imagination, simple and final. It may have been a message of hope. We have moved south, or a farewell. We have become something else. Either way, it was the last thing they ever said. If you stand there now, under the same Carolina sky, you might imagine the settlers looking out to sea, waiting for sails that never appeared. You might feel the weight of the silence they left behind. Not empty, but filled with meaning too large to fit into words. And in that silence, perhaps you understand the truth that every empire eventually learns. It is not the land that vanishes beneath our feet. It is we who vanish into the land. Like this video, share truth, and subscribe to uncover the stories history tried to forget. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button, share this story, and subscribe to the channel for more hidden histories and untold truths.